We got to get to our interview. It's terrific. You're going to love this guy as you have before. Senator Schmitt. I want to welcome to the program an old friend of the program. You've heard him at least twice, at least. 3 times maybe?
Yeah, maybe 3, 2, 3.
At least, but going all the way back to your primary candidacy. And now senator, a terrific attorney general when he was there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Eric Schmitt from Missouri, thank you for coming in.
It's good to be here. I think the first time it was like a Zoom, very different than the illustrious Dick Wolf studio we're in now. Like, this is very fancy. But congratulations on all the success.
Well, that's very nice of you. I mean, we have upgraded the facility a touch. I do think it was a Zoom, and I'm pretty sure we were staring like at a white wall behind.
Yes.
There was nothing good going on. But when we first talked to you as Attorney General, you didn't have your eyes on the prize in terms of running for Senate. You were doing the hard work as Attorney General. And we've now seen over the last year, which I find so fascinating, you're a senator, you're doing Senate stuff, but all the work that you put in as Attorney General is coming to fruition now. The biggest one, Missouri v. Biden, which we've talked about on this program before, has huge consequences here over the last few weeks. Can you start with that?
Yeah, well, I thought actually, so we had the student loan debt forgiveness case too, because Missouri was the hook on standing because we had this loan servicing organization called MOHELA in Missouri, which was key because the other side was really trying to say, well, these states can't sue. And if we wouldn't have had that standing, we wouldn't have won. And we had the standing and we did win. So I thought that was going to be like the biggest news, on the 4th of July. But then on Independence Day, the federal judge issues his injunction, which I don't think was an accident, by the way. It's like the First Amendment's reborn on Independence Day. Yeah. And so, but it was significant. So when we filed that lawsuit, and you got to remember, this is before Elon Musk buys Twitter. It's before the Twitter files. And if those two things had happened, the lawsuit and Elon Musk buying Twitter, still all this stuff is just not known. It's in the dark, and people be called conspiracy theorists, and we need to combat disinformation with censorship. All this stuff would have been still happening. So we filed the lawsuit, and importantly, we were able to do discovery before these motions kind of played out, because that ultimately was...
and that's what we were talking about before,
Yeah.
is some of the things that you'd found during discovery.
Yeah, so it was a vast censorship enterprise, is how we've described it. And it's really shocking, honestly, the extent of it. So it went from, agencies that people never heard of, like CISA, and then you've got the CDC, and you've got then the White House officials, and then them outsourcing these nonprofits, or at Stanford University or University of Washington. This was an operation, and the goal of it was to suppress speech. And they would do it in a few different areas were the most prominent: the origins of COVID, the Hunter Biden laptop, and then sort of COVID protocols in general. The transmissibility of COVID if you've gotten the vaccine, right? Or natural immunity. These things that people just kind of in this marketplace of ideas wanted to debate or challenge. The Biden administration wasn't interested in that.
Which is uniquely American, right?
Yes.
Anything that we discuss it, we debate it.
Yes.
There's right and wrong and whatever, but we have a discussion about it. And these guys just said no.
Well, in many ways, if you go back to the founding, the founders knew exactly these disputes typically in most places in history and in the world today are resolved through violence, right? Political violence. That's how you settle the score. And in this country, we really believe that the First Amendment is this pressure release valve, right? Like, you guys can come on the show and say your piece. There's some rival leftist podcasts, they can do their thing, and people have this information. They can make their own decisions, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't interested in that, and they still aren't interested in that. They want to shut down the other side, and they, the direct communications from people like the Surgeon General of the United States to senior Facebook officials, like, take this down. But more than just taking it down, they made them change their terms of service along the way.
Yeah.
And they did it by threat, like legal threat. We're going to take away Section 230.
Yep.
All these sorts of things that the power of the federal government, especially the White House, can bring to bear. That was the linchpin for the judge to say, okay, you are coercing. You are now the thing you're not allowed to do as the government. You can't now get big tech to do it for you and hide behind this. So it was a very significant ruling. They're still challenging it, but there's more work to do. I'm going to be working on legislation with others in the Senate to sort of codify what the judge did and also say people have a private right of action if they've been aggrieved by this. I mean, so there's a lot to do, but no doubt this has uncovered, well, as in the judge's words, perhaps the most extensive censorship enterprise in the history of the country, and an Orwellian-like ministry of truth. His words. I mean, that's how the evidence that's been presented so far. So I'm certainly gratified by it, but it's scary too. I mean, this is the United States of America, and the government shouldn't be telling you what you can think or hear or say.
How much of this do you think, and I want to get into Duncan with this because he's got some strong views, but how much of this do you think was brought on by the 2016 election and this idea that the post-2016 environment, Democrats basically created this entire narrative around Russia buying Facebook ads and that they could somehow pressure Facebook to change their business model, eliminate advertising, eliminate targeting, changing all of this stuff. And then they sort of viewed them like they historically viewed utilities or communications companies, you know, like Verizon's and AT&T's or whatever, where they were like partners with the government on various items. How much do you think all of this was bolstered by that movement?
Well, I think like so many things we see right now, Trump and COVID broke the Democrats.
Yeah.
And so I think what they said was, we're never going to let something like 2016 ever happen again. And we're going to marshal all of our resources because they're aligned with us to, under the guise of misinformation or disinformation, to shut this down because we can't let that ever happen again. And so you saw them with the Russia hoax and all that stuff. But then I think some of the more chilling stuff is, you know, we took the deposition of Elvis Chan, who was an FBI agent.
Yes, I remember this.
And he's having monthly then weekly meetings. First of all, they have the Hunter Biden laptop. They know it's real in late 2019. In 2020, leading up to the election, he's having these meetings saying, look out for these Russian hack and leak operations. Look out for these Russian hack and leak operations. The Hunter Biden laptop comes up according to Yoel Roth, his sworn affidavit. They specifically mention it and trying to, again, to suppress the story before it comes out. So that stuff is just sort of chilling. So in this order, the FBI is also one of the entities and agencies that's prevented now from engaging this kind of conduct and flagging and have this sort of discourse with these social media companies, which is huge.
No, it's amazing.
It's in all these discussions, I kind of feel like Walter Sobchak, you know, in The Big Lebowski, and I'm sitting at the coffee counter screaming, you know, the Supreme Court has widely rejected prior restraint. And with all this stuff in free speech, like you're talking about prior restraint. You're talking about preventing people from saying stuff before they can even have a debate, right? And, you know, back to 2016 and everything thereafter, whether it was Trump and Russiagate or COVID, I think what the Democrats did, either, you know, wittingly or unwittingly, is they have built the low trust society that we live in today. You know, and that not being able to discuss things like natural immunity or the likelihood of somebody getting an infection from a coronavirus after taking a vaccine. The flu shot exists. People still get the flu.
Yeah.
Like, that's how this stuff works. But not even being able to discuss it has made our society more skeptical of stuff that is facts, just because they have sort of plowed the ground of mistrust among Americans. Like, how do we fix that problem? Like, I worry about the future and that COVID might have just permanently broken people's trust in institutions.
Well, obviously, you know, institutions sort of have to hold. I mean, they're doing right now with the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Right. They don't like the outcome. And instead of working like conservatives did for generations to have people who, you know, believe in the rule of law as opposed to making it up as they go along, right? They want to just discredit it ultimately for the goal of packing the court. And if that happens and you want to say it's 13, well, why not 50?
Yeah.
Why not 100?
Right.
You know, and then you really are down this path of this banana republic that people are warning about. But I think the first thing we got to do is confront this stuff. And so when I was AG, we were suing local school districts and the bureaucrats who were shutting down schools and imposing mask mandates too, because in the media lost their mind, the Democrats lost their mind. But the truth was, if you were a kid, you were more likely to die of a lightning strike and twice as likely to die of a dog attack than you were of COVID.
Yeah.
But yet they created this culture of fear and nobody's safe until everybody's safe. It really is a kind of a authoritarian playbook, right? That kind of dovetails into the administrative state, which is if you can create that kind of fear, if you can create an emergency, all of a sudden this is what tyrants have done since the beginning of time. You consolidate that power and you exercise it in a way that we saw that I don't think we've seen in America before on that kind of scale.
Well, we know that this authoritarian playbook isn't coming from nowhere. We know it's funded by outside forces, very, very deep pockets on the left wing, including people like George Soros. And we know that George Soros is running candidates, DAs from around the country, and it's not just on the East Coast. It's not just on the West Coast. He had DAs in the Midwest. He had a DA in St. Louis. And I know that you guys have dealt with that there. I'm sure you've been fighting these guys for years.
Yeah, and it's hard to, this was happening. I mean, Soros made a decision if you think about the power of a local DA, there's only one person in that county. So St. Louis County is 1 million people. St. Louis City is 300,000 people. But there's only one person that gets to make really the charging decision on carjackings or homicides.
It's wild.
And if you have somebody that doesn't want to do that, which he's been successful in getting across the country, that creates a lot of chaos, a lot of disruption. And what do you need for really the kind of upheaval to start anew? That's what you kind of need, right? And so that's the angle here. And then, of course, if you get people to not even believe in like the fabric of who we are as a country, like America, this idea that we're all born with certain rights and we can pursue our dreams. If you attack that and teach the next generation to despise the country, like America is not like some, we don't believe in some blood and soil chant. Like we believe in an idea, and if you tear apart at that's the real concern. Getting back to these, and so I just think it's way more nefarious, and it's played itself out. And a lot of rank and file Democrats that are, voting, maybe they don't feel that way, but certainly the people who are funding this, the people who are now embedded. I mean, you look at
they're committed dogmatically,
and they're politicizing everything. Yeah, everything. Whether it's now. They're infusing abortion politics into everything. Even in the military, we're talking about, DEI trainings and these like modern day struggle sessions. It's nuts.
Well, you can't even go through the 4th of July without getting a lecture about how it's criminal.
Well, Cory Bush it's just a total joke.
What a wild.
I mean, it's so in Missouri, you got Josh Hawley, Eric Schmitt, and you got Cory
Bush.
So, anyway.
It's whiplash, man. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, so you're a brick wall against that. You're also a brick wall on the baseball field, my friend. You've presented us with a baseball card.
I do. I have. I haven't signed it yet, but that's on the table.
I'm going to ask for a signature.
I think I'm going to too. I'll promptly put it next to my Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card because I believe it has similar value. A rookie this year in the game, the Congressional baseball game, you hit a bases clearing triple, basically put the game away.
Yeah. It was fun. I had no idea. There were 27,000 people there at Nats Park.
Isn't that wild?
I had no idea. I was joking.
Probably their most well-attended game.
And I had no idea, but I was joking with somebody on the team, like, this is what I really wanted to do with my life.
Yeah, right.
I ended up in the Senate, but playing in the outfield for the Cardinals would have been my dream. But it was fun. And, so 2 for 3, 2 walks. 3 RBIs, 2 runs.
Stats guy.
Triple, 160 OPS, but who's counting? No.
Did you get a little batting practice where you could take a shot at the wall?
Well, we had a lot of practices.
Yeah.
So here's what they don't tell you.
You had to actually work at it.
It's 5:45 in the morning,
wow.
which is 4:45 Missouri time.
Oh, yeah.
And, I was the new guy, and I wasn't rolling in there like a whatever. I was like,
you're there to impress.
It's like the Midwestern work ethic. So I was there, and we would take. I think the hardest thing for me was judging fly balls. It's the first time I've done that in the outfield in decades.
Yeah.
But we took a lot of BP, and it was fun. And the day of, you got to do BP down on the field. Before the game. But my family came in town.
That's awesome.
I had the maiden speech earlier that week. So it was actually a really fun week for me and my family. And then to come through in that moment was fun too.
So we've been talking here amongst the program over the last few weeks and felt like you got robbed from the MVP there.
I'm moving past that.
Can we talk about the politics of this?
There are a lot of great players.
Yeah,
I was just there to help the ball club.
Yep.
Classic Midwesterner.
It's the Bull Durham.
This is
on the bus. Here are the quotes that
the W is the most important thing.
That's right. Everything I can do. I'm just glad I got a good swing on a good pitch. It was a lot of fun, and I had no idea. And it's mostly House members. There's Joni Ernst was the only other senator on our side.
Well, yeah, there's not a lot of Senate guys that are like equipped to play the game of baseball.
There aren't many in the 40s that
Yeah.
in their 40s or 50s that want to play. But
No, I hope the House guys show you proper deference on the field, though. That's
I
important.
required it.
Yeah.
No, it was a lot of fun, and there's some great. And I wouldn't have gotten to know those
Yeah,
guys,
right.
any other way. So it was, as you're first year here, you're getting to know people personally. There's a little
cool
bonding when you're up shagging fly balls before the crack of dawn. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was fun. It was
Totally. Oh, that's awesome. You also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you've brought us something here.
It's this is a big deal. I've been on the show, but never in this august setting.
Right.
So we brought like a real drink to make the Missouri Mule. The history here is
I mean, you've gone above and beyond. So, a lot of our guests bring in like their favorite bourbon or their favorite whatever. You brought in the full drink.
it's a theme. It's the Missouri Mule.
Okay.
It kicks like a mule. And Harry Truman, this was made for him when he was over in Europe by a famous bartender in England. We've got a little card explaining it with the recipe.
I mean, this is well done.
This is the respect I have for you guys. Well, you're out here trying to change the world. The least we can do is bring you a Missouri-themed cocktail.
I mean, this has got a lot in it. We're talking bourbon, brandy, Campari. You got a little, looks like triple sec or a Contro. I mean, this is no joke. Like you probably 2 is okay, 3.
Yeah. Well, I'm the barbecue beer guy generally. So this is, again, I was going out of my way here to like the baseball team, make an impression. It's the Midwestern.
That's right.
Midwestern value.
I love that.
But I mean, you guys know this. Whenever you and I saw each other for the first time when this whole Senate thing was rolling, I was like, friend of the program.
He was friend of the program from day one. I loved it. And look, we've been following you. The one thing that I appreciate more than anybody else is, generally speaking, when you're a freshman senator, you come in, you got to get the lay of the land, figure out where you sit, where the bathrooms are, all that stuff. And it takes a little while to start making an impact. The interesting part about you, as we just discussed, is that your previous work is making such a gigantic impact on the debate that you're currently having in the Senate that it's like you're front and center here.
It's an interesting, in a lot of the things that I want to work on, right, is this, dismantling the administrative state, taking on censorship, big tech, a lot of these issues were things that I got a chance to work on in my previous role that now we need, more structural kind of reform, and that the place for that is in Congress, right, in the Senate. And so, I look forward to helping out and doing everything that I can. I sound like this is the Bull Durham, just helping the team. But no, listen, it's
just one step at a time. We do day to day.
Yes, it's an honor of a lifetime. I mean, my family came up for, including my parents who are still living. I mean, they had never even been to Washington D.C. Right?
Oh, is that right?
Wow. So for the swearing in, and I was the 2000th on the dot person sworn into the Senate. That whole, you got to really appreciate it. And
were you really 2000 on the dot?
Yeah.
2000 senator.
Yeah.
Well, that's something.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. But
you think about the hundreds of millions of people who've gone before you, and you're 2000.
Yeah. But
that's amazing.
Yeah. It's again, I grew up in a working class neighborhood. I'm not sure that I ever envisioned all of this, and so I approach it like that, just with a lot of humility and work hard and. You try to make a difference.
Well, you mentioned your family, and one of the reasons actually we here at the program loved you from the start is because of your family. You have a son with special needs. I've got a daughter with Down syndrome, and what I'm sure you've found that my wife and I have found, you and your wife I'm sure have found, is that you having a child with special needs inevitably sort of catapults you into some sort of responsibility that people who don't have kids with special needs, find themselves in. You're involved, and you got involved in public service. A lot of why you got involved in public service was because of your son. Right?
Yeah. It's as you know, it's a perspective that I'm not sure I would have had otherwise. When Stephen was diagnosed, so I guess to back up, so Stephen is now 18. He'll be 19 next month. When he was born, I was a lawyer, had just made partner. Things were great.
Yeah.
And he had a birthmark that looked like an angel wing on his leg. And we thought so little of this as we set up the doctor's appointment. Like Jamie was like, "You can take him." Like, so we didn't think it was a big deal. I'm taking Stephen to the doctor. And
Yeah, I mean, then you know, mom doesn't.
no,
She's
so
like,
this
"We're
was,
good."
This was pro forma,
Yeah.
not a big deal. And immediately, the doctor was like, he has something called tuberous sclerosis probably, and I didn't know what that was. And before we could see a neurologist, I'm on WebMD, and there's all these sorts of challenges, and he's had to face them all. I mean, Stephen has TS, he's on the autism spectrum, he's completely nonverbal, he's epilepsy, so he has seizures almost every day. And seeing he had a 4-hour seizure one time,
Oh,
and
jeez.
when you go through that, you do a lot of reflection, right, on what is the purpose here, right? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And so through that sort of discernment, my conclusion was I need to do something more than what I was doing before. So public service was the way to go do that. And so I served in the state Senate before I was in statewide office in Missouri. And it was really kind of this catalytic event. And Stephen is still to this day, I mean, getting a big hug from him, and he's just such an inspiration for me and our family. And anybody who's ever met him, I'm sure it's the same with your daughter. It really, the small stuff doesn't bother you as much. You I think, realize what's really important in life, and you go fight for it. And so Stephen's always been that kind of touchstone for me.
Yeah, it's incredible.
great.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ashbrook, because there's always been, since the first day we met you, a grounding, right? And this is a very ungrounded business.
Yes, I've discovered.
Right? I mean, other than Hollywood off the left-hand side of the map, but in a bipartisan way, DC is just everybody's inflating their own egos. You've always kind of had a sense of what you're doing and why you're doing. And it wasn't until I understood your full story, as you just explained, as to how that I couldn't quite figure it out. Like, 'cause nobody's just inherently the way they are. There's just always a backstory to it. And you have that, and which is, I think, going to serve you so well as you're dealing with all these various issues. Always under attack. Obviously, you're a Republican, for starter.
Right.
But secondarily, you got everybody else trying to sell the book and be on the TV and do all that stuff, and you've always been doing the hard work.
Yeah. Well, I'm very grateful. I've have a great family. My parents, and like I said, just sort of where I grew up. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I didn't, none of that. I thought, I was attracted to law because it gave people, it provided these guardrails for people to pursue their dreams. So I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And my wife in college, and been married for almost 25 years. And then of course I've got 2 daughters who are awesome, and Stephen's great. So that's the stuff that's really important to me. And then I mean, whatever. I love this country.
Yeah.
And I believe in, who we are,
Which is
and why it's
amazing
important.
that now, I think when we were growing up, you could say that and it didn't sound trite. And now that there's a half of this country that doesn't actually believe that.
It's nuts. It's really
wild,
is.
right?
It is crazy. And you get into these hearings, and obviously I'll press witnesses as part of who I am. But it's why some of these things that you see, whether it's, CRT or
Yeah.
it really just sort of undermines the fundamental tenets of what makes this country such a great place. That you can pursue your dreams and you can achieve anything. You work hard, and I believe that.
Which is true.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And the people who want to undermine have a they want us to go down a very, very different path.
Yeah.
And again, it's not unique. Like, it happens. It's happened forever, and it's happening now in other places. But America's always been this exception, which is American exceptionalism, right? Which has now become to some people a four-letter word too, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So I just think we got to keep fighting. And so I've never been afraid of those things. And maybe it's part of this, I feel like I know what's important, and, you're going to fight for those things. And I'm willing to go do that.
Yeah, well, it's a hell of an admirable quality. Do you find yourself, I mean, look, you've always been engaged in the policy. I imagine you're going to more committee hearings than you ever imagined possible and all of that. But do you ever, you're also a student of politics. Do you ever sit back and look at presidential and everything and try to figure out sort of who's up, who's down, and all of that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting because I had 3 statewide elections in 6 years.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And so having a 6-year term,
that's a master's degree.
Pretty
right there.
nice. Pretty nice. And Missouri's, it's interesting because Missouri is, it's sort of a compilation of a bunch of different regions, which is why it was always this ultimate bellwether. It's trended more right, thankfully.
Yeah.
But, Southeast Missouri is much more southern, and Southwest Missouri is much more like Texas and Oklahoma, and St. Louis looks a lot more like Cincinnati, and Chicago and places like that. And Kansas City kind of faces to the west, and Denver, and northern Missouri is a lot like Iowa. So you get a sense when you get around the state, there's different things that are important to different people. And I love that about the job. I think that, the ability to...
It is the one thing that about people who represent Missouri have historically understood is different parts of the country think differently inherently. I mean, they've always had a pretty good national voice as a result of what you're talking about.
Yeah, you see it. You see it on the ground, and it keeps you on your toes, which is a good thing if you're somebody that's supposed to represent the people. So, yeah, I think there's a, the 24 election, I think, is going to be pretty wild. I think
that's fair.
Yeah, and then but it's nice to have a 6-year term, just to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Where you have a little time to kind of settle in, but do all the stuff that's important, right?
Yeah.
But as you know, this seniority matters in the Senate, and you're trying to, do things that are relevant and find your place with legislation. Like you said, I think it's a little bit easier for me because I have stuff that I've worked on before that's still relevant in this job. But you're learning too. I think you approach the job with humility. Like there's a lot of things, like I'm on Armed Services Committee.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these classified briefings that I came to, especially in the first couple months,
eye-opening, I bet.
Is eye-opening, especially with China.
Yeah.
And anybody who's claiming that China is just still some, we just need to sell Big Macs and Nikes and everything's going to be okay. That's not the case anymore. I mean, they mean business. They have militarized islands that they have built with anti-ship and anti-aircraft weaponry, and they're playing in space in a much more meaningful way than people think. And they're, in my view, they're hell-bent on domination now, world domination. They view themselves as this, society that's existed for thousands of years, and they are, like other people for the last 240 years, are kind of betting against America, right? That this isn't sustainable, self-government isn't sustainable, which is why I think these fights are so important, to hold on to these things that matter, like an independent judiciary. And you don't blow up the filibuster to pack the court. And
we can't even stop their weather balloons. I mean, they have good reason to sort of question America right now at this moment, which is what makes it so scary.
Yeah, I think that the withdrawal in Afghanistan opened the door to everything that you're seeing right now. And Biden and this administration, they project weakness. And whatever you think about it, that matters on the world stage. That's how people like... dictators across the world, they view things as America strong. Will they respond? All those kind of calculations that people make are really important. And this administration is not up to the task. So I think it's up to us to make sure that we're prepared for these things. And I just think what's going on in space and what's happening in the Indo-Pacific is, we better be ready for it.
Yeah.
So
it's a really good point. You're getting to know everybody. Right. And you spend, in those long vote days, you spend time like walking around the Senate floor and seeing people you never talk to and chat. When you talk to Democratic colleagues, does anybody ever betray any confidence about, like, has Joe Biden really got it here? Like, is he?
I mean, I think they he's he's their guy, so they're somewhat limited probably in what they can say. But you see some disagreement, and honestly, some of the cracks are. I'm on the Commerce Committee too, and Gigi Sohn was one of the first hearings, and I was really pressing.
You got some sweet committee assignments, by the way.
No, and by the way, for me, they're important because they're actually a couple of things the federal government is supposed to do, like regulating interstate commerce is actually and protecting the country.
That's like the
federal government does a lot of stuff it shouldn't do, but those are somewhat relevant. And but she's before the committee, and she's a radical, and she was going to use that position for her own point of view, not like what she's supposed to be doing. And we were able to beat back that nomination. I think the Commerce Committee, there's been 3 that we've killed, and Sinema will come on board, or Manchin will come on board. I think some of these things, and you see when we're rejecting the rules that Biden, now he may end up vetoing it, but you can peel off some, especially when they're in election years, right?
Yeah,
like
right. Now all of a sudden,
Tester.
Tester's found religion.
Yeah, all of a sudden. But
he's running the DSCC, and now he's all of a sudden turned himself into an ultimate moderate.
Yeah. So that is interesting, and you never know when something like that's going to come up. But I think for me, I think you want to work hard, fight for the things that you believe in, put the work in, and that's what I've always done, and that's what I intend to do here.
Well, we're eternally grateful for it, and pleasantly surprised at the immediate impact that you can make. We knew you'd be a great senator. I didn't know you'd make it in the first 6 months you were here.
Is that just because the Missouri Mule arrived here?
Yeah, that's 100%.
I appreciate
It's
that.
100%. Anytime you bring multiple bottles
Yeah,
for
that's
us,
right.
you
That's
get
right.
especially nice comments.
That's right.
Well, and talk about a gust, like the whole recipe here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the real deal.
Yeah, no, it's a nice cardstock.
Yeah, it's a nice card
thick
stock.
cardstock.
What's the weight on this? You know?
Can we do a surprise question here?
Oh
Sure.
my
One
gosh,
one
okay.
surprise question.
Yeah.
You've been on the show before. You've already done the traditional 3 questions.
Oh, he loves
Yeah.
this. I know.
But
he's
we
doing.
do have one more.
Okay, yeah.
That is sometimes asked of our greatest friends.
Okay.
And that is, what is the biggest animal that you think that you could take
man.
mano a mano? And
We're talking bare hands.
Can I have a selection of? Can we have a few that you have in mind?
Well, some
as we go
people
up
say
the food chain.
like a wolf or a coyote. Some have said a horse. You know,
Well, Smug says a horse. He's the only one that
yeah,
says
Smug
a
says a horse.
Yeah.
Chris Christie thinks he can take a wolf because he keeps piano wire in his pocket like
Yeah.
everybody from New Jersey, I guess, apparently keeps a piano wire in their bag.
I think
The whole range.
maybe a boar.
I think a kangaroo.
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Kangaroo.
Can we
yes.
talk-
They're tough.
They are. And
And
they're
they jab.
stacked.
The jab is they got a killer jab. But I think you strike first, and then you never let that kangaroo up.
Do you get inside?
You got to get inside.
Yeah, you got to get. And now listen, I got the reach.
Yeah, I was
got
going
the
to say.
reach. Yeah.
6'6". I got a little
Yeah.
reach, so I think I get the first shot in, and then I got to get the roo on the ground.
Yeah.
You got to steer clear of those hind legs, too. It
Yeah.
feels like those got a power.
Yeah, if you give that animal free range, I mean you got problems. So you got to get on the ground first. So I think it's a tough animal. I think that you'd be proud to take down.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
No,
size
100%.
sometimes, like a horse. I mean, if you're behind the horse like a mule, you got problems.
You're going to get
Yeah.
smoked.
Yeah, but I do love the conversation about. I mean, you guys are onto something with the killer whales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're onto this.
See, I
Yeah.
knew he would be onto this.
Yeah.
They're coming
Yeah.
after us.
Yeah,
They're all coming after us.
yeah.
The whales sinking boats? What's the full rundown, Smash?
Well, there was a dog that shot its owner. There was a hog that killed its butcher. There's a band of monkeys that are throwing toddlers off of roofs in Asia.
Yeah.
And now killer whales are coming alongside small boats in the North Atlantic, and they're knocking them out. These just simple Scottishmen are out trying to catch something,
trying to provide for their family.
and killer whales are living.
Well, I mean, if we
their
want to be energy dominant again, bring back the blubber and the whale oil.
exactly right. It's a renewable
This
resource.
is America first policy position.
Yes.
I love that. Well, you heard it here first. We've got maybe an original co-sponsor on the blubber for America.
The infamous blubber amendment.
Oh, I love it. Eric Schmitt, you are welcome here anytime, pal.
Oh, by the way, I have to share one story.
What do you
Almost
got?
forgot this.
Please do.
So I'm making calls. I think this is after the primary, and you
Yeah.
have to have the resources to get your message out. And I call. It was somebody from around here. I don't even
Okay.
remember who it was, but I'm on the. I call and said, "This is Eric Schmitt." Oh yeah, no. So talking about the race, and his wife is in the passenger seat. He said, "Oh my God, I love Eric Schmitt. He's on Ruthless. That guy's awesome. I love the show." So it helped me. Like, you guys have no idea the impact you have. But I don't think this guy really knew me from Adam, but the wife did from the podcast.
You're
and
like,
the
sounds like a double max then, huh?
Right. It's going to be tough. A run against a self-funder. Yes, absolutely.
That's great. I love that. Well, we seek to provide.
Yes, and you guys do. So
You're the best. Thanks a bunch for doing this. If people want to follow along with your work, your Senate website, obviously.
Yep.
You have a campaign website as well.
Yep, Schmitt for Missouri, or Schmitt for Senate, and then we have and them on the Twitter machines,
Yep.
and the Insties, and the Facebooks too.
All right.
_ Schmitt. So
It's
love what you
important
guys
work.
do.
You gotta follow along because this guy's making waves very early in his Senate career. Eric Schmitt, thanks for joining us.
Love it. Thanks, guys.
Man, he's great. He's great.
It's just look. It's nice to have guys like this. It sort of reinforces your belief that we're still sending really solid, smart people who can do the job to Washington.
We're sending our best.
We are. I mean, in this case, we really did, and that's debatable.
It might not be true
Overall.
for all of them there.
Yeah.
But I mean, not only is the guy super smart, but very humble for everything that he's accomplished in such a short tenure thus far.
Incredible story,
Yeah.
incredible work as an attorney general. He's parlayed that into somehow convincing people to get on like all the great committees, and then using that to sort of forward the work that he was doing as AG. I mean,
Guy's every bit of 6'6", by the way.
yeah, he could dunk.
He might be the tallest guy in the chamber since Jay
Ask him
Rockefeller.
that. I wanted to talk about if he could dunk.
Oh, there's no doubt.
I mean, he was
no
tall,
doubt.
tall enough that Wolf had to adjust his camera when he sat down.
Wolf, did you have a problem getting him in screen? Yeah, he did.
Wow,
Huh?
that's impressive.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.